Lord Drake stood before the massive display screen in the Dominion's war room, his scaled fingers drumming against the metallic command table. The holographic image of New Eden rotated slowly before him, a blue and green jewel of a world that the humans had colonized just 50 years ago. "They're farmers," he said, his voice filled with contempt. "Simple dirt diggers who barely have orbital defense systems." He turned to face the gathered war council, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh lights. "This will be the easiest conquest in the Dominion's history." Dr. Wells, a small, hunched figure in plain scientific robes, cleared her throat. "My lord, I must advise caution. Our studies of human history suggest—" "Spare me your academic theories, Doctor," Drake interrupted. "I've seen the physical data. Humans are weak compared to every other spacefaring race. No natural armor, no claws, poor night vision, and barely any muscle mass." He pulled up comparison charts on the screen. "Even their reaction times are mediocre." The War Council murmured in agreement, but Dr. Wells persisted. "Physical capabilities aren't everything, my lord. Humans have a remarkable ability to—" "Enough." Drake's tail swished in irritation. "I didn't call this meeting to discuss anthropology. We're here to plan a conquest, and I've already decided on the perfect strategy." He pressed a button, and the display changed to show images of the Dominion's pride and joy. Their war beasts, massive creatures from 100 worlds, each one enhanced with cybernetics and covered in battle armor. There were 6-legged predators from the gravity wells of heavy worlds, serpentine hunters from gas giant moons, and aerial killers that could dive at supersonic speeds. "We'll drop the war beasts during their harvest season," Drake explained, his eyes gleaming. "Their communities are spread out, focusing on gathering crops. Perfect hunting conditions." He zoomed in on the agricultural regions of New Eden. "The beasts will devastate their farming communities, and their primitive militia won't know how to respond." General Cross, a veteran of 3 campaigns, raised a concerned hand. "Why not simply bombard them from orbit, my lord?" Drake's expression turned sly. "Because we need this world intact. New Eden is perfect for colonization. Rich soil, breathable air, and established infrastructure. Why destroy what we can simply take?" He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Besides, this approach will minimize casualties among our own forces. The war beasts are expendable." The council members nodded appreciatively. It was a clever strategy, they thought. Use biological weapons that would leave the infrastructure intact while terrorizing the population into submission. Dr. Wells made one last attempt. "At least let me show you the data about human hunting patterns throughout their history. Their species has experience with—" "Dismissed, Doctor," Drake said coldly. "Save your concerns for your research papers." As the council members filed out, Drake remained behind, studying the colony's agricultural maps. He focused on one region in particular, the Bennett Valley, where most of the grain was grown. "We'll start here," he muttered to himself. "Drop the largest predators first. These farmers won't stand a chance against beasts that could tear through metal." In her office, Dr. Wells pulled up her research files on human history. Images flashed across her screen. Ancient cave paintings showing humans hunting mammoths, historical documents about species humans had driven to extinction, studies about their evolution as persistence hunters. She began typing quickly, preparing one final report. "They're making a terrible mistake," she whispered to herself. "These simple farmers are the descendants of the most successful predators Earth ever produced." But she knew Drake wouldn't read her report. Like so many others, he saw only what he wanted to see, a primitive colony ripe for conquest. The war beasts were being loaded into their drop pods, and the invasion of New Eden was about to begin. The Dominion was about to learn why underestimating humans was a deadly mistake. The morning sun rose over Bennett Valley as Bill Cooper drove his harvester through the golden wheat fields. It was a massive machine, but he handled it with the ease of someone who'd spent 20 years farming on New Eden. Through the harvester's front window, He watched his grandson Tommy running alongside the machine, pretending to race it. That's when the sky turned dark. At first, he thought they were meteors, bright streaks cutting through the morning clouds. But meteors didn't slow down before impact, and meteors didn't roar when they hit the ground. "Tommy," Bill shouted through the harvester's speakers, "get back to the house. Now." The boy ran as the first pod crashed into the wheat field half a mile away. The impact sent waves through the golden crop like ripples in a pond. Bill switched on his radio, already hearing the panic in the emergency broadcast channel. "Unknown objects dropping across Bennett Valley." A voice crackled. "All farmers return to safety points immediately." Bill turned his harvester around, but it was too late. Something massive burst from the fallen pod, sending twisted metal and dirt flying in all directions. Through the dust, he saw a creature straight out of humanity's darkest nightmares. 12 feet of muscle, armor, and teeth, moving on 6 legs with frightening speed. But Bill Cooper hadn't survived 30 years of farming on the frontier by panicking. He grabbed his emergency rifle from under the seat and did something the Dominion's war planners hadn't expected. He charged straight at the beast in his harvester. The creature was built to hunt prey that ran away. It wasn't prepared for a human driving a 30-ton farming machine straight at it. "Eat steel, you ugly bastard," Bill yelled as he rammed the harvester into the beast. The impact dented his machine but sent the creature tumbling. Its armor cracked, showing vulnerable flesh underneath. All across Bennett Valley, similar scenes played out. Jane Wilson, whose family had been hunting on 3 worlds, took down one of the flying beasts with a precise shot from her old rifle. The creature's cybernetics might have been advanced, but its brain was still in the same place as most flying animals. At the Miller farm, 3 generations of family members turned their irrigation systems into weapons, trapping a serpentine beast in the mud before their oldest tractors ran it down. The creature's armor was tough, but it couldn't match the weight of human farming equipment. Tom Walker, watching from his front porch, saw something the others didn't. "They're hunting in patterns," he said to his wife Mary, who was already loading their shotguns. "Just like the mountain lions back on Earth." The emergency channels were filled with voices now, not of panic, but of farmers organizing. People who had spent their lives working the land, dealing with dangerous animals, and surviving on the frontier were sharing information. They don't like the sound of the harvesters. Their armor is weakest at the joints. They're avoiding water. Use the irrigation systems. In the colony's emergency control center, Governor Richards listened to the reports with growing pride. The aliens had expected terror and chaos. Instead, they got organized resistance from people who'd carved a living out of wilderness worlds. "Send word to all settlements," she ordered. "We're not evacuating. We're hunting." Back in space, Lord Drake received the first reports with disbelief. The war beast's casualty rate was far higher than expected. These simple farmers were fighting back with primitive but effective weapons, turning their agricultural equipment into tools of war. "Impossible," he muttered, watching another beast fall to what appeared to be a combined harvester converted into a battering ram. "They're just farmers." Dr. Wells, standing quietly in the back of the command room, finally spoke up. "No, my lord. They're humans. And you just dropped predators onto a planet full of humanity's most resourceful pioneers. The kind of people who've been dealing with dangerous animals and harsh conditions their entire lives." The reports kept coming in. The war beasts were deadly, yes, but they were about to learn why humans had always been the most dangerous animals on any world they inhabited. Tom Walker stood in the morning mist, studying marks on a fallen tree trunk. Around him, a group of farmers and local hunters listened carefully as he pointed out the claw patterns. "See these scratches? They're marking their territory, just like Earth predators," he explained, running his fingers over the deep grooves in the wood. "These beasts might have fancy armor, but underneath, they're still animals. And animals have patterns." Behind him, his old truck had been modified with steel plates and reinforced bumpers. In the back, a captured piece of beast armor was being studied by Mary, his wife, who had spent 15 years as a veterinarian before moving to New Eden. "The armor has weak points near their joints," Mary said, tapping the damaged piece. "And look at these marks. They need to breathe. There are vents in the armor we can target." The group had grown from a few neighbors to an organized hunting party. Each person brought something valuable. Farmers knew every inch of the land. Hunters understood tracking, and mechanics could modify their equipment into weapons. They hunt at night, Bill Cooper added, his harvester now sporting makeshift armor and a reinforced ram. "But we got something better than night vision. We know our land by heart." Tom nodded, then pulled out a roughly drawn map of Bennett Valley. Red marks showed where the beasts had attacked, blue marks where they'd been spotted resting. "They're following the creek lines," he pointed out, "just like mountain lions used to do back on Earth. They use the water to hide their scent, and the banks for cover." He drew a circle around several points. "But that means we can predict where they'll go." The hunters split into teams, each taking different sectors of the valley. They didn't have fancy weapons or advanced technology, but they had generations of hunting knowledge and a deep understanding of predator behavior. Jack Thompson, an old trapper, showed others how to set up snares strong enough to hold the beasts. "They're big, but they still need paths through the woods," he explained while setting up a reinforced cable trap. "And big animals make predictable paths." The first success came that afternoon. The six-legged beast, following the creek as Tom had predicted, stepped into a hidden pit trap. The walls, lined with harvester blades, damaged its armor before it could leap out. When it finally escaped the pit, Bill Cooper was waiting with his modified harvester. "Just like handling a mean bull," Bill said afterward, looking at the fallen creature. "Except this one had more legs and a worse attitude." By nightfall, they had developed a system. Spotters in high places would track the beast's movements. Trappers would set up choke points using farming equipment and modified vehicles. Hunters with high-powered rifles would target the weak points Mary had identified. In the colony's command center, Governor Richards received regular updates. 6 beasts down in the last 12 hours, her aide reported. "The hunting parties are getting better at this." "Of course they are," Richards smiled. "We're not just fighting back, we're learning. That's what humans do best." Up in orbit, Lord Drake watched with growing concern as more war beasts fell. The creature's built-in cameras showed him everything. And what he saw disturbed him. The humans weren't running from his beasts. They were systematically hunting them down. "My lord," a junior officer reported, "we're getting strange readings from the beasts' cybernetic systems. The humans aren't just killing them, they're studying them, learning how they work." Dr. Wells, who had been quietly monitoring the situation, finally spoke. "Did you know, my lord, that before humans built spaceships, they hunted animals larger than themselves to extinction on almost every continent of their homeworld? Not with advanced weapons, but with simple tools and understanding of animal behavior." She pointed to a screen showing humans setting up another trap. "Those aren't just farmers and colonists down there. Those are the descendants of Earth's most successful hunters, and you just gave them new prey to hunt." The war beasts were learning a hard lesson. On any world humans inhabited, they were never the apex predator for long. The ground shook as more drop pods pierced the evening sky above Bennett Valley. Lord Drake had doubled down on his strategy, sending in his largest and most aggressive war beasts. But this time, the humans were ready. "They never learn, do they?" Tom Walker said, watching the pods descend through his binoculars. He keyed his radio, now part of a network spanning every farm and homestead in the valley. "Heads up, everyone. We've got new guests coming to dinner." The response was immediate but calm. No panic, no chaos. Just the smooth operation of people who had been preparing for this moment. "North Sector ready," came Bill Cooper's voice. His harvester, now practically a tank with its reinforced armor and mounted weapons, waited in a camouflaged barn. "South Sector in position," reported Jane Wilson. Her hunting platforms, built high in the valley's old trees, gave her team perfect firing positions at the beast's weak points. The first pod crashed through a wheat field. Its door blew open, and a massive creature emerged, bigger than the previous ones, with thick armor plates and what looked like energy weapons mounted on its shoulders. It raised its head and roared, expecting to terrify its prey. Instead, it triggered a trap. Hidden speakers around the field blasted out a specific frequency that Mary Walker had discovered while studying the captured beasts. The sound wasn't harmful to humans, but it played havoc with the creature's cybernetic systems. Their fancy technology is their weakness, Mary explained through the radio as the beast staggered. Natural animals adapt. These things can't change their programming. The creature stumbled into the wheat field. Its targeting system scrambled. That's when the humans struck. Harvester machines emerged from hidden positions, their normal cutting blades replaced with strengthened rams. They didn't need to kill the beast, just hold it in place. Like handling a mad bull, Bill shouted over the radio. Except this bull's got a computer for a brain. From her tree platform, Jane took careful aim with her rifle, now modified with armor-piercing rounds designed by the colony's engineers. Targeting the left shoulder vent, she reported calmly. Just like taking down a charging bear, hit them where they breathe. The shot rang out. The beast's armor cracked at its weakest point. More shots followed from other platforms, a coordinated attack that brought the massive creature down. Similar scenes played out across the valley as more pods landed. The humans had turned their entire farming region into one giant trap. Irrigation systems could flood areas in seconds, creating mud that fouled the beast's joints. Modified drones, originally used for crop spraying, now dropped nets and smoke bombs. In the colony's command center, Governor Richards watched the tactical display with pride. "Send the data from this sector to all other regions," she ordered. "Every farm, every village. Show them how we're beating these things." Up in orbit, Lord Drake's command staff watched in horror as more war beasts fell. These weren't random victories. The humans had developed systematic methods for dealing with each type of creature. "My lord," a junior officer reported, "they're adapting faster than we can send new variants. They're teaching each other. Every beast we lose, they learn more about how to kill the next one." Dr. Wells, still watching from her corner, smiled slightly. "Humans have a saying, my lord. The more things change, the more they stay the same. 10,000 years ago, they were sharing hunting techniques around campfires. Now they're sharing them through radios and data networks. But the principle is the same. They learn, they adapt, they survive." As if to emphasize her point, another war beast fell on the tactical display. The humans hadn't just learned to survive against the beasts. They'd learned to win. And they were teaching each other how to do it better with each passing hour. Lord Drake stormed into the research section of his command ship, his tail lashing with anger. The screens around him showed more failed attacks, more dead war beasts. How were simple farmers defeating his perfect weapons? "Dr. Wells," he shouted, "I want answers." The small scientist looked up from her desk, surrounded by historical documents and biological data. "I tried to give you answers before the invasion, my lord. Perhaps now you're ready to listen." She pressed a button, and the room's main display lit up with images from Earth's history. Cave paintings showed tiny human figures taking down massive creatures. Archaeological records displayed the bones of ancient predators. "This is what I tried to tell you about," she said, pointing to the images. Humans didn't become Earth's dominant species because they were the strongest or fastest. They did it by being the best hunters their world had ever seen. Drake watched as she brought up more records. "These simple farmers you dismissed, their ancestors hunted creatures called mammoths, beasts larger than our biggest war creatures. They did it with stone spears and wooden tools." "But that was primitive technology," Drake protested. "Our beasts have armor, cybernetics, which makes no difference." Dr. Wells interrupted, showing footage from the current battles. "Look how they hunt our beasts. They study the patterns, Find the weaknesses, work together. It's exactly how their ancestors hunted. She displayed a new image, an ancient human hunting party tracking the large predator. Next to it, she put a current image of Tom Walker's group planning their attacks. Nothing has changed, she explained. Humans were never the strongest species on their world. They weren't the fastest. They didn't have natural weapons. But they had three things that made them deadly. She held up one finger. First, they can observe and learn. Look how quickly they figured out our beast's weaknesses. A second finger. They share knowledge. Every success is taught to others. A third finger. And they can outlast any prey. Their ancestors would chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. They called it persistence hunting. On the screens, more footage played from New Eden. Humans methodically wearing down a war beast, following it, never letting it rest, until they could strike at its weak points. The colony's governor just sent us a message. A junior officer reported, entering the room. She says they're willing to accept our surrender. Drake's scales flushed with anger. Surrender. To farmers. To hunters, Dr. Wells corrected. The most successful hunters in known space. Did you know humans drove over 50 major species to extinction on their homeworld before they even developed powered vehicles? Not because they wanted to, but because they were too good at hunting. She brought up one final image, a map showing human expansion across Earth, followed by a map of their colonial expansion into space. Every world humans settle, they become the apex predator, she explained, not through strength, but through intelligence, cooperation, and persistence. Your war beasts never stood a chance. Drake stared at the casualty reports. Hundreds of war beasts dead. His perfect weapons, hunted down by humans using modified farming equipment and simple projectile weapons. If you had read my reports, Dr. Wells said quietly, you would have known. Humans turned hunting into an art form thousands of years ago. These colonists, they're the ones brave enough to settle new worlds. The ones who still remember the old skills. And you gave them the perfect opportunity to prove that humans are still the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Outside the research section's windows, New Eden turned slowly below them. Down there, more war beasts were being hunted, tracked, and taken down by descendants of Earth's most successful predator species. The Dominion was learning a lesson that Earth's ancient animals had learned long ago. Never underestimate humanity's ability to hunt. Mary Walker stood in the colony's main research lab, surrounded by pieces of war beast armor and control systems. On the table before her lay the brain of one of the creatures, its cybernetic implants exposed. Look at this, she said to the team of engineers and scientists gathered around. The control system isn't just giving them orders. It's suppressing their natural instincts. She pointed to a glowing section of the neural interface. These animals aren't naturally this aggressive. They're being forced to fight. In a reinforced pen outside, a captured war beast paced back and forth. Unlike its rampaging companions, this one had been carefully tranquilized and partially freed from its control systems. It was one of the six-legged predators, but its behavior had changed dramatically. They're pack hunters by nature, Mary explained, watching the creature through the observation window. The Dominion turned them into berserkers, but that's not their true behavior. She turned to face Governor Richards. We can do better. The governor raised an eyebrow. You want to turn them to our side. They're just animals, Mary said. Very smart animals. And humans have been taming smart animals for thousands of years. In the lab next door, Tom Walker and Bill Cooper worked with the colony's tech experts to crack the beast's control codes. They had gathered dozens of intact control units from their successful hunts. It's like breaking a wild horse, Tom said, examining the control interface. First, you have to earn their trust. Show them you're not a threat. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Mary's team managed to completely disable the control unit on their captive beast. The creature's natural intelligence emerged, and to everyone's surprise, It was far more sophisticated than the Dominion's brutal programming had allowed. They turned these beautiful creatures into weapons, Mary said sadly, watching their test subject gently take food from a handler's hand. But we can show them a better way. Word spread quickly through the colony. More war beasts were captured alive now, carefully tranquilized, and freed from their control systems. Mary and her team worked around the clock, developing a new, gentler control interface that worked with the creature's natural instincts rather than suppressing them. High in orbit, Lord Drake received the most disturbing report yet. "My lord," his tactical officer said, voice shaking. "The humans, they're not just defeating our beasts anymore. They're taming them." The tactical display told the story. Freed war beasts were now fighting alongside the humans, their natural pack-hunting instincts making them far more effective than they had been under the Dominion's brutal control. In Bennett Valley, Tom Walker led a hunting party that included 3 former war beasts. The creatures moved silently through the wheat fields, using their enhanced senses to track their still-controlled brethren. "Easy, big fellow," Tom said, patting the flank of the largest beast. The creature's armor had been modified, stripped of its weapons but enhanced with better protective plating. "Let's go find your friends." The hunting party moved like a well-oiled machine. The freed beasts would locate their targets, while the humans would move in to disable the control systems. More often than not, the controlled beasts surrendered once they sensed their freed companions. The Dominion made a mistake, Governor Richards said, watching the latest successful hunt on her tactical display. "They thought these creatures were just weapons. But humans know better. We've spent our entire history working with animals, understanding them, forming partnerships." Dr. Wells, watching the same feed from the Dominion ship, couldn't help but smile. "First, they learned to hunt the beasts," she said to no one in particular. "Then they learned to understand them. And now," she gestured to the screen showing humans and freed war beasts working together. "Now they've done what humans always do. They've turned their former enemies into allies." Lord Drake stood before the Dominion High Council, his scales pale with shame. On the massive display behind him, footage played from the failed invasion of New Eden. The council members watched in stunned silence as scenes unfolded, war beasts being hunted down by farmers, creatures being turned against their masters, and finally, the humiliating retreat of Dominion forces. "Let me understand this clearly," the High Chancellor said, her voice cold. "You lost our entire war beast program to farmers." "Not just farmers," Dr. Wells stepped forward, now officially summoned to testify. "Colonists, pioneers, the kind of humans who choose to settle new worlds." She gestured to the screens. "In other words, the most adaptable and resourceful of an already resourceful species." News of the defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings gathered around screens to watch the footage. They saw humans in modified farming equipment taking down cyber-enhanced predators. They watched in amazement as colonists turned the feared war beasts into allies. Back on New Eden, the celebration was in full swing. The town square of Bennett Valley had been transformed. Alongside the parked harvesters and hunting vehicles stood reformed war beasts, their armor painted with the colony's colors. Children rode on the backs of creatures that had once been sent to terrorize them. "Never thought I'd see something like this," Bill Cooper said, watching his grandson Tommy feeding treats to a 6-legged beast that now helped guard his wheat fields. "Turns out they're pretty good at herding cattle, once you show them how." Tom Walker stood with Governor Richards, looking over the changed valley. "The Dominion did us a favor, really," he said. "Those beasts are better suited to farm work than fighting. Strong, smart, and now that they're free of the control systems, surprisingly gentle." Mary Walker was busy teaching other colonies how to free and rehabilitate any remaining war beasts. Her veterinary protocols had been shared across human space, just in case the Dominion tried their strategy elsewhere. "The funny thing is," she told a group of visiting reporters, "these creatures were never meant to be weapons. The Dominion took beautiful, intelligent animals and tried to turn them into monsters. We just helped them become themselves again. In the galaxy's diplomatic circles, the story became a cautionary tale. Videos of humans hunting down war beasts with primitive weapons and modified farm equipment became popular viewing. Military analysts studied the footage, learning hard lessons about underestimating humanity. The humans didn't just beat the war beasts, one alien general noted. They understood them, freed them, and turned them into friends. Who else would look at a cybernetic killing machine and think, I bet that would be good at herding cattle? Dr. Wells, now promoted to head of Xenological Studies, gave her final report to the Dominion Council. The mistake wasn't just attacking humans, she explained. The mistake was forgetting what made humans dominant on their homeworld. Not technology, not strength, but their ability to adapt, learn, and turn enemies into allies. She showed them one final image. A human child riding on the back of a war beast through a wheat field, both seeming perfectly happy. They've already started breeding programs, she added. Within a few generations, these creatures will be as loyal to humans as Earth's dogs. That's what humans do. They don't just survive, they thrive. They don't just win. They change the game entirely. The story of New Eden became legend, told and retold across the galaxy. How farmers and colonists defeated the most feared weapons in known space. How humans proved once again why they were the most successful predators in history. And most importantly, how dropping war beasts on a human planet became known as the greatest military mistake in recent galactic history. In Bennett Valley, life went on. The wheat grew tall, the modified harvesters worked the fields, and the reformed war beasts helped guard the crops. Just another day on a human colony world, where the descendants of Earth's greatest hunters had once again proven why you should never, ever underestimate humanity's ability to adapt.